wait until I say no Zoom meeting ever starts on time. It's always at least 3 minutes late. So we'll let a couple of people join. Oh my gosh, Bill Shepard. Hey, Bill.
Hi, Will. How are you?
Good. So glad to see you.
Glad to be here.
Welcome, everyone. It's nice to have you here.
Are you coffee or tea today, Bill?
Uh, oh, coffee.
Yeah.
Definitely coffee.
Yeah, I got some new herbal tea that I'm trying out. So
Uh, Very good. Very good.
Okay, we're here for Divergent and Convergent Thinking in Marketing and Advertising in 21st Century Approaches. I'd like to introduce you to William Fogarty. He is the Community Manager and co-founder of Playstorming. Since 2021, he has set about to revolutionize creative problem solving to meet the needs of 21st century creatives. And William is the great-grandson of the inventor of brainstorming, Alex Osborne, the O in BBDO. He holds a master's degree in creativity and change leadership from SUNY Buffalo State. He applies his expertise to advance ideation in advertising and marketing to help creatives win in the age of AI.
thank you so much, Melissa, for that wonderful introduction. As she mentioned, I am co-founder of Playstorming, and I feel very fortunate that COVID slowed me down by a year, or else I might have not gotten the opportunity to work with AI and to learn all of the digital tools, the ups and downs of digital tools, actually. So I was uh, in 2020 during the spring, right when COVID started, my uncle John Osborne and I had a very, very, very unproductive time learning Mural and Miro. We spent, I don't know how many hours, at least 5, just trying to learn how to do the digital post-it note technology. And during that time period, I was continuing my master's degree studies, and John Cabra was also teaching us how to use Mural and Miro to facilitate using digital post-it notes. And at the time, I was also working with a organization called Institute for Myanmar United, and we were doing a lot. We were doing in-house stuff, and we had templates, we had designs, we had a lot of hand-holding from John, who was doing this professionally, and ultimately, it kept not working out. And part of the reason is that the interface is kind of clunky and not streamlined for design thinking in addition to creative problem solving. So we found a number of flaws with the existing systems for digital ideation. And luckily enough, I had met my co-founder of Playstorming, Daniela Plattner. She is a 21st century creative thinker, and she wanted to digitize, optimize, analyze, a lot of I's, and create a new technology that would digitize creative problem solving using guided audio. And we started going to build that technology back in 2021, July 2021. And we used Mural for our first design boards. So it was kind of an ironic moment for me to be like, we're trying to replace these Mural and Miro tools, and had no idea that AI was going to come along and totally bridge the gap between human design thinking, creative problem solving, brainstorming, at least the generative aspects of brainstorming with the help of AI. And Yeah, from there we had a project roadmap, which led us to about 2023 when Daniela realized, hey, we can incorporate AI into play storming and be sort of on the front line almost, or being some of the first movers in the field to completely digitize a creative problem solving like process. It's kind of creative problem solving light. That's why I called it divergent and convergent thinking in marketing and advertising today. And simply what we're trying to do is we want to support human creativity with the help of AI, and specifically creatives in marketing and creatives in advertising is our primary focus. And in order to do that, we realized that we need to strengthen human creativity with the help of AI, and we're not going to be on the side of other tools like Jasper AI or some of the other mid-journey AIs, which are looking to replace creatives. We want to keep the workforce creative, and we want to keep the workforce strong, and we want to support people to develop their own ideation processes with the help of AI. So before I get into a little bit of interactive questions for you, I'm going to jump right in to one of the main points that I want to talk about here today, which is at Playstorming, we want to help creatives generate workflows that maximize their ideation. And one of the ways that we want to do this is kind of what I mentioned. And this is, I was looking yesterday, Mr. Mahoney, correct me if I said his name wrong, but he talked about sometimes the end product of AI is rated more negatively if you start with AI first rather than beginning with the human design thinking or the human CPS process. And I was kind of blown away when I was reading that this morning. I wasn't able to attend his session, unfortunately, but that's exactly the process that we have laid out. And I think it's one that Alex Osborne, if he was alive today, allow me to invoke his name once during the presentation, I think he would be on board with it, because very early on, his first process, which he called How to Think Up, in his 1942 book, How to Think Up, the whole idea was you think of as many ideas as you can, and then you sort of bring it to the advertising meeting. So it's like individual ideation, and then you bring it to the team context, and you have some ideas to work from. So that's why we wanted to start with a focus on human creativity first, and to maximize your ideation processes for marketing and advertising with the divergent thinking guidelines. And the two that we always emphasize for people is to seek wild and unusual ideas and to go for quantity. Or in other words, remember the thirds principle of ideation. So I'll slow down a bit and kind of get into the weeds a little bit with the two of these. So in Alex's work, one of the main things, his original creative problem solving guidelines, he had kind of framed it as seek wild and unusual ideas. And that's how I first learned it. There's a lot that could be said about go for quantity. I'll focus a little bit more on the thirds principle when I get there. But, in our play storming divergent thinking methodology, one of the things that we help people do, especially in advertising, is we want them to push the envelope. We want them to start big and keep going big. And part of the reason for that is that AI comes in, and AI will kind of smack a label on things, might flag some things for you if you want to get some help with convergent thinking from AI, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But the idea is that Alex used to say it's easier to tame down a wild idea than to spice up a boring idea. So that's one of the things that we really push people for today is, don't worry about, the convergence part first. Don't worry about putting a bunch of criteria on yourself. Don't constrain yourself. It's deferred judgment, but a little bit of the icing on the cake, or when you're adding a little bit of extra flavor to it, a little extra seasoning to your ideation. Off the bat, just go wild. Let yourself run wild, and if you feed your divergent thinking into an AI later, First off, they can't blame you anymore because you have your AI companion, with you, who's going to be saying, yes, no, maybe so to your ideas as you're getting feedback from it. And then besides that, you'll go through the human convergent thinking process as well. So that's one of the things right off the bat that we want to do. And then, along with the thirds principle, which I'll talk about in a minute, think about AI ideas. If you're using a generative AI tool, as idea starters. They're thought starters. What it's going to give you is never going to be a final finished product. It's just not there. We spent ages with ChatGPT and other AI technologies trying to get good, culturally relevant marketing or advertising ideas, or uh, hip ideas, or cool ideas, or things that resonate with people, that connect to emotion, that connect to context, that connect to timing. AI just is not at that point at this stage. So when you're using it, and you're using it generatively, or you're using it for your divergent thinking process, know that you're going to have to develop, in terms of the Puccio, and Firestein kind of 21st century models, or the Foresight models. You're going to have to develop the ideas. And then the thirds principle. So this is one that we like to hammer home to people. Um, a lot of people are not familiar in advertising, at least, with traditional creative problem solving. So we always hammer home the idea that when you're going for quantity, be prepared for the 3/3 of ideas. So the first third, traditionally in brainstorming, has been well-worn ideas. I think that was the language of Alex and Sid. Well-worn, or ideas that are top of mind, kind of easy to get to, or top of mind ideas is another way I've heard it. The second third are usually, to use my words, trash, garbage. There's a lot of, when you're doing the thirds method of ideation, expect for a lot of bad ideas. And then the third third, after you go from well-worn ideas into sort of the trash ideas, is you can come to ideas that are truly novel, innovative, and even if it seems plain, at the end of the process, you can at least know that you have gone through well-worn, you have gone through bad ideas, and you've gotten to ideas that are stronger, because you have spent more time deliberately ideating on them. So that's one of the ways that we talk about workflows, in terms of how you're going to be replicating your digital ideation processes. So focus first on your human creativity. You don't want to go like punch into ChatGPT and be like, give me ideas, because then you're really outsourcing the creative part of the process. And that's what we want to avoid, because a lot of ChatGPT ends up being kind of well-worn ideas, or not culturally nuanced. So it's very hard for marketing and advertising progress if you're going to go sit down first and worry about what the machine's going to tell you. You need to dig in a little bit and do your own divergent effort up front, and then your effort up front will pay dividends towards the back end. So before we get into some of our other recommendations, I would love to hear from some of you. What is your existing digital divergent thinking process? So if you are using pen and paper, and post-it notes and flip chart paper, you've got your own board, you've got your own, probably your own company doing marketing, advertising, or corporate innovation. So I don't really want to touch that, or grapple with that. But I'd love to hear, either in the chat, or if you want to come on the mic, what are some of your existing digital divergent thinking processes? Let me see. All right, chat's coming in. Miro board, Miro, and Mural. Storms. Okay, I have heard of Storms as well. Jiro, I'm not familiar with, but it sounds like people are using Miro. Okay, we got some pen and paper. Very cool. Glad, glad that's still alive and well. Okay, awesome. Let's see, we got a new one. Oh, Jiro equals Miro. Sorry. Okay, post-it notes. Some people are still using pen and paper. Okay. Sketch on the iPad. Okay, that's very interesting. Thanks for sharing, Troy. iPhone notes. I also use iPhone notes a lot. iPhone notes as well. Okay, very cool. What I like, I have a Mac, so the iPhone connects to my Mac as well. So that's one of the features that I like about it. Cool. So it seems like I'm on. That was more or less what I was expecting. Some people still doing the handwritten method, some people doing the iPad method, um, iPad or iPhone method, and then some people using Miro and Mural. So we're gonna get into a hot take that I have from that. I would love to hear later on. It's not a super hot take. I've already kind of mentioned it in the description, which is I'm not a fan of either way of Mural, Google Jamboard. Storms is an interesting technology. It's been a while since I've used it, but that definitely interested me and kind of piqued my interest as being different from the rest of them and being more specific for a CPS crowd. So before we move forward, let me see. Anyone interested in sharing out loud anything about your ideation processes or how you're using it digitally? If not, we'll go keep moving forward. All right. So show of hands, who is familiar with design thinking or has done design thinking in your work? Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, awesome. 6. Oh, hey, Mike Ackerbauer. Nice to see you. We're Sipsy buds, I think in 2020. Um, awesome. So, and since I think Mike might have just popped in, we just had a little bit of a discussion about what we use, how we use Miro, Mural, or other digital methods for ideology. So, if you want to drop anything in the chat, Mike, about how you're using what you use for your digital divergent thinking process, please feel free to do so.
I see there's a hand raised as well. William Shepard.
Bill, yeah.
No, I was raising my hand in answer to your question and that came
Design
up.
thinking. Okay, thank you.
Okay, just didn't want to miss you.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Bill. Yeah, so one of the things that I've had some discussions with people, who have kind of their own boutique agencies or their one-person agencies, or they're kind of in a more consulting role, a little bit less agile or teams focused. And one of the things that he said was, I really like doing brand guidelines, but I hate doing copywriting. And I think there's a few people here who might agree with that, especially if you're working in the digital age where you need a lot of nuance between captions, email outreach, website copy. There's a lot, even text marketing. There's a ton of different ways that you market to people and that you try and reach people. And if you're working alone or you're working in a small team or you don't have someone who's easily accessible to you, it can be pretty challenging and it might worry you to think that, hey, I need to be responsible for, oh, and the brand brief as well. So you're handing back your brief, you're getting the brief and then you're ideating on it and then you're trying to meet their brand guidelines and a bunch of constraints. And then, you might go through your whole iterative copy process, and by the time you generate all the copywriting needs, you hand it back to your client, and then your client says, actually, this isn't the direction that we were hoping to go. So, especially if digital copywriting is not your strength, we really encourage the use of AI companionship to think of your copywriting and content ideation as prototypes. So when you're bringing them to your clients, or when you have client-facing needs for copywriting, we really encourage you to use AI to help you prototype. So again, going back to our previous discussion about using human creativity first before you seek the help of an AI companion, what you want to do again with this is use your own ideas as starters and dig into that ideational effort that Alex and Sid and a lot of the early founders of the field talked about, that you can increase your human creativity through your creative effort. So you want to use that, but you also want to be expeditious if you are focused on copywriting or content creation, either social media or email marketing or even advertising ideation. So you also want to eventually, I would really recommend, if you are seeking different styles and different forms of ideal copy for your creatives or for marketing or for advertising, you want to divulge your ideas to an AI to help expedite the process. And what they can do is it can output full drafts or prototype drafts or a number of different prototype drafts, so that you don't have to sit at your keyboard, or using your digital voice recorder or whatever your process is for copywriting and content ideation. You want to be able to quickly come up with drafts and again take that design thinking, or sort of the creative problem solving brainstorming early ideation phase method of saying, this is a prototype, it's not going to be a finished product, and then you want to edit and complete your prototype and then move on to clarification. So by editing complete, what I mean is the AI, again, Gen AI specifically, is not a great improviser. It's not a great nuancer. It's not good at human connectivity at this point. So you obviously are going to be kind of the heart of bringing in the emotion, bringing in the intelligence, or the emotional intelligence and the cultural context to whatever you're creating. And then after you feel like you're satisfied with the prototype, then you can clarify with your client or team. So basically, just if you need to, run it against the criteria, if you need to cross-check, that's one methodology. If you are trying with your own personal brand, I would recommend you pilot and check performance. So that's kind of the caveat with clarify with the client or team, is that if you're truly using a design thinking or a brainstorming, sort of like the initial conceptual idea of brainstorming methodology, you can always pilot and check performance. So if you're doing copywriting, if you're using your own personal brand, it's not a mistake to have something that flops or something that underperforms. You actually can learn a lot from that in an iterative fashion, and then you always want to check your performance, or monitor your statistics. But you also need to know your KPIs or your key performance indicators before you move forward with copywriting or your content ideation. What are your goals? What needs to move forward? Do you need clicks? Do you need conversions? Do you need sales? Are you selling merchandise? What are your key performance indicators? And then you check your performance from there. So that's step two. Step one is generate ideational workflows that are effective and efficient. Second is to consider using prototypes with AI for copywriting and content ideation. Third, we kind of mentioned this a little bit earlier, in terms of how you are going to optimize your idea development and to move into the develop stage of the 21st century, or the foresight methodologies of creative problem solving. So that's clarify, ideate, develop, and implement. You're really going to want to optimize your time for idea development. And one of the things my former colleague and a dear friend of mine, Pam Slaze, if you know your Foresight profile, she is a developer. And when we were working together, I would say, you know, how's it going? And she'd be like, I'm kind of in developer hell right now. And I was like, what is developer hell? I've never heard that. Like, what is that? And she's like, it's this whole thing where I'm 90% satisfied, and no matter what I do and how much I tweak it, I keep getting less and less satisfied. So I'm moving from 90% to 80%, then I go back up to 82. You know, it's this whole process of you tinker and you tinker and you tinker, and you're never satisfied with anything. So one of the things that we want to do with idea development, and kind of going back to our previous slide, was which was talking about prototyping, is that you want to iterate on what has performed well. So if you are a digital marketer or an advertiser, you know, sometimes you find a bread and butter. You know, you find a formula that works well, and if you find something that performed well at least a few times, you want to try and iterate on that. So you don't have to go all the way back to the start of your ideation process and say, you know, I'm going to begin at ground zero every single time. If you find something that is converting well, that has high conversions and is meeting your key performance indicators, you want to iterate on that and keep performing well. The other improvisational ideation process that you can go through is, if you're stuck, especially if you're personal branding and you're stuck, just go back to what flopped. You know, if something really flopped, but you felt super good going into it that this is going to perform well, you can sometimes, by looking at the data or feeding it into some of the other analytical AI tools, you can find out what might have gone wrong and you can try to improve it. So this goes back to the prototyping idea, where if something doesn't perform well and you test it, but you know, there might be something like a key performance indicator, like if you have an open rate that's very high and a click rate that's very low, you know, abnormally exceeding or underperforming those different levels, you can try different variations of what already exists, and that's a way for you to maximize your time. And advertising is a big proponent of maximizing your time for ideation. We hear a lot of people tell us, you know, we would love to spend more time coming up with creative ideas, but you know, um, sometimes our bread and butter just is what we do, and we don't really get past that. So our recommendation usually is, you know, if something flopped but you felt good going in, dig into it, and if you find any sort of performance indicator that suggests you can improve with iteration, then it's worth an effort to see if it's worth an effort, or it's worth a try at least, to see if you can maximize something on a second time. Second one, we already mentioned, don't get stuck in developer hell. You know, you just need to know what your limit is. You know, there's this idea sometimes you have to go beyond your limit, or, you know, go beyond that your stuck point. You know, sometimes if you're completely stuck and you're jammed up, you know, you might as well push it out there. You know, if you're too far into a project, or you're starting to get a backlog of different projects or different client facing work, or, you know, even in your personal brand, if you feel like you're stuck, you know, don't feel like you should have done more, you know, especially if you have someone who is into the idea of iterative content creation or iterative content generation. Don't get stuck. You just keep it moving. Keep mining if you need to, but you know, you can retroactively learn a lot in this day and age of data analytics. And then always track performance. I think that one's pretty obvious, but you need to know what your criteria are for performance before you launch your product, or launch your brand, or launch a campaign. Okay, let me just check the chat again, see if anything's coming in. Oops. Um, all right, couple things in the chat. Huge Miro guy. Developer. Alright. I'm glad that resonates, Mike. Cool. All right. So now I get to I know Mike's a huge mural fan, so maybe we can discuss at the end, and maybe I never optimized my mural uh, AI process. But one of the recommendations that we're really on the front line for with playstorming is including AI in convergent thinking. So this is something everyone's like, Gen AI, generative AI, we need to generate, we need divergence. And I'll let you in on a little secret of mine and how I got to this idea, how our team got to this idea of including AI in convergent thinking. This was way back in September of last year, and we had published online some templates for playstorming, for brainstorming and divergent thinking. And I went to bed that night and I had a dream. And in this dream, I had all of these idea boxes overflowing with ideas. And people were just walking past. Nobody stopped. Nobody looked. Nobody touched any of the ideas in the idea box. And I was like, what the heck, what's going on? And then a lady looked at me and she said, uh, I don't know which of these ideas to choose anymore. And I woke up and I was like, oh my God, I think I have an insight into the future of Gen AI, which is it's gonna be noise after a certain point. If you're using divergent thinking for creative marketing and advertising, there's going to be a point where, especially if you're outsourcing your ideation processes or your divergent thinking processes, and you're kind of going to Gen AI first before doing your creative methodology, it's going to be it's going to be noisy. It's going to be harder and harder to distinguish before you launch something, before you bring something to the market, so to speak, or bring your brand to market, or any brand to market. It's going to be harder and harder to know what good is. And the reason for that is, one, you're outsourcing. A lot of people are outsourcing their ideation and they're saying, all right, chat GPT, or whatever Gen AI you use, you tell me, here's my brand brief, give me some ideas, and then I will iterate. And if you don't have some criteria in mind, or you start to lose that intuitive highlighting sense of being able to generate many of your own ideas without distracting yourself in developer hell, and not without slowing yourself down. If you're able to come up with those ideas in divergent think, you need to include intuitive highlighting into the process. So step one of AI and convergent thinking is don't outsource your ideation. So that goes all the way to the beginning, and then focus on human convergence. So there's a lot of data analytics tools, data analytic tools, which will tell you, performance and past performance, what's popular, what's on brand. There's all sorts of different criteria that they already come with. But if you're not using your own criteria, and you're not using a tool like intuitive highlighting, which connects to your emotions, which connects to your visual field, which connects to your intuition, dare I say, then it's going to get noisy, and it's going to be hard for you to look at something brand new and actually be able to evaluate it if you're not consistently flexing those convergent thinking and creative muscles. Um, Mike, this one, I told people I had a hot take, so this is open for debate. But I think for truly good convergent thinking in the 21st century, I think we're going to have to ditch digital post-it ideation. And one of the things that I think about that is, it sounds counterintuitive, I know, because they have good highlighting tools, and you have your sticky that you can put on your post-it notes, and people can vote on it, and but ultimately what I think is that it's a bit of a time waster. And the reason that I'm saying that is that if you're using something that's like a digital whiteboard, you can use a text box just as easily, and you can have people thumbs up text box just as easily as you can an actual digital post-it note. And for copy and for convergent thinking, I feel like the text box is way more effective than the post-it note. So the text box, especially if you're doing copy or convergent thinking, you can pull things out easily. You don't have to import and export mural boards. You don't have to convert everything into plain text or into HTML or whatever you want. If you have a text, copy and paste is a very easy solution. However, if you're trying to group post-it notes, it's just clunky to extract all of the information and especially the writing from post-it note ideation boards. And I really recommend text boxes. And then the other thing to include in convergent thinking with AI is you are the first opinion. You are the first opinion. So what you think intuitively highlighting using your criteria, um, you are the first opinion. Treat everything else as a second opinion. AI should be your second opinion. It should be looking for what you might have overlooked, what you might have lost sight of. If you improve your brand guidelines at a later point, upload those and cross-check. But don't view AI as something that is going to be the first thing that helps you make decisions in convergent thinking, because eventually it is going to get noisy if you keep outsourcing your creative thinking. Um, so that's sort of my pitch for today for you. So first is you have to develop workflows that are conducive for divergent thinking, and Gen AI may or may not factor in for you at this point, but don't lose sight of your creative effort. Second is prototype. So you want to prototype copy guidelines, especially, and content ideation. Third is maximize your time developing. Don't get caught in ideation hell. Iterative thinking is very helpful, and performance is well tracked, especially if you're using digital marketing or social media tools. And then finally, include AI in convergent thinking, but you are the first opinion. Focus on your human conversions first, and then think of things as second opinions. And also, just ditch the digital post-it notes if you want. Text box, I think the text box is the optimal way of using it, especially if you are getting second opinions using AI. You can export it. You can export it much easier than a post-it note, which can get clunky and you have to drag everything all over the place, and things can fall apart a little bit. So now that I've kind of pitched you all the playstorming methodology, I would love to hear if anyone has any questions, comments. Comebacks also are welcome. So if you didn't like what I said, I'd love to hear your comeback. And then any concerns, would love to hear from you. So thank you so much.
I say I absolutely love that. I love your idea of like not outsourcing your ideation and the value of using your intuition for those convergent points, but using AI to, help focus it. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, outsourcing. Outsourcing creativity, I think, would be the worst case for humanity. So
Absolutely.
at
And you
least,
make a good point too about AI eventually becoming noise.
yeah, I think it's like, even if one of the advantages that copywriting has for people in the US is if English is your first language. A lot of people do outsource different creatives aspects to India or Brazil, or even Argentina is getting very popular. But if you are a copywriter, they can't outsource English as your first language with generative AI as it is now. In a few years, 4 or 5, that might not be the case. There might be many second language specific English tools for AI speakers. And if they are driving down the cost of ideation and copywriting with the help of with AI replacing creatives, especially if you're North American, the prices are going to be higher for you than they will be in India, for example. So it should matter to you to keep copywriting and to keep your creative process and your at least your creative process ideation uh, front and center, because those things become elusive if you get used to outsourcing it, and then it might be hard to compete in terms of budget in the next 4 or 5 years. All right. So
I
thank
have
you,
a question.
Melissa. Go ahead.
Uh, I I actually have a couple, but one of them is you mentioned your KPIs, like it's your feedback loop that tells you if you're on track. And there's this notion that we measure what we can measure.
Yeah.
And what if, is there something that you would like to be able to measure, but you can't? That would be maybe a better indicator of what success looks like?
I think the one thing is emotion, for me at least, and part of the reason that I say that is, um, there's a lot in sales that people want cult brands or cult connections. I know that sounds creepy for people not in marketing. What that essentially means is you develop in a long-term relationship with your audience, so that it's almost like a survive need or a survival need where you become so invested and connected to your brand that you can't really imagine things without it or your life without it. So um, in terms of like tracking things, people can get sophisticated. Like on TikTok, they some of the TikTok tools, or if they bring in live audiences, this is real. They'll track your eye movements and they'll see, like, oh, where am I looking? Where do I look first? What catches my eye about your For You page or your About Me page, or whatever they want to test. But they're not as much looking at the emotional connection. And for the survival of your brand, it's going to be that the long term benefit will be from your consistent emotion. Um, and positive emotion is good, but also negative emotion can be good. If your cult followers or your cult contingents have a negative emotion to one of your posts, you can definitely learn a lot from that and make sure that, sometimes you want to iterate and mine what didn't go well, but sometimes you need to know what it is you need to avoid at all costs. So I think emotion, there's a long way to go before any of the LLMs or sentiment analysis or anything can actually get close to like what are they feeling at like a visceral level.
Mm, cool. Makes sense. Yeah. I'll defer to somebody if they have another question before I go on with my second one.
Anyone else?
Yes. William, what would you generally say is if you're going to give guidance to someone like me about a fairly reliable AI partner to go with now, considering that the market already has several out there and not
Yeah.
all of them are created equal, as we know or have at least heard. What would you suggest? Is there any one in particular that really attracts you?
Well, to be direct, I'm co-founder of Playstorming, which is a Gen AI tool. So I think I have to
Yeah.
say number one, I would I can't recommend anything else. But if you want to focus on starting and learning, GPT has a lot of, or OpenAI suite has a lot of technology learning
Mhm.
guides as well. And then there's social media will make recommendations for how to optimize those GPT processes. If you want to go all in, you can upgrade to their business suite. which I think is, to be direct, it's worth money. Is it worth the money they are charging? I can't get into that nuance, but for design thinking, if you wanted to dive in, and I can send slide deck out to people if you send me an email, I'll put that up on the screen. But if you send me an email, I can send the slide deck, and if you want to design thinking or copywriting or whatever, you can pretty much use the slides as a mini guide for ChatGPT, as long as you know where to click and all that.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Well, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah.
This
Thanks for the
session will
question.
also be recorded too. So for anybody that would like to watch it again and have access to the slides. And
Yeah.
I'd like to thank everybody for attending, and we'll have to wrap up so we can get ready for the next one. So there'll be another at 1:15. There are more concurrent sessions, including this room will still be open. Jennifer Babcock will be talking about biomimicry in this room.
Cool. I'm open to stick around for a few more minutes, Troy, or anyone else who has any more questions. Other than that, if you wanna jump, I hope this has been a massive leap forward in the discussion about AI, productivity, and digital 21st century divergent and convergent thinking. So it's been a blessing to join you all today, and I look forward to more dialogue to come.
Well, if nothing else, I'll tell Bill Fogarty here in Houston that you said hello.
Does he spell his name A-R-T-Y or E-R-T-Y?
No, I think it's A-R-T-Y.
Yeah.
Just like yours, Fogarty.
A lot of people ask me if I'm related to Creedence Clearwater Revival, and I was like,
Oh, yeah.
no, just Alex Osborne.
Yeah. Well, it's a nice presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe.
Yeah, my second question was around I don't have a lot of familiarity with it, but they're AI bots, right? That you give them basically an objective to do something. And when I think of that iterative approach that you're talking about in development, like refining and fine-tuning something, it makes me think like that kind of a bot would be interesting to help refine and develop a tagline or something like that. Are you following? Are you familiar with that?
Yeah. So I've heard of like sale sort of like chat boxes. So like in terms of like if you're on the like digital vending, for instance, like you have a bunch of questions, or like you have some questions like at your point of sale that can lead you through to some more digital conversions. I think that's kind of like an optimal place, but that's a little bit consumer facing. So if you're talking about consumer facing, in sort of IT, or like what's the word, customer service, not so much IT, customer service, I think in terms of like a plugin like on the back end, that could be an easy install to help guide people to kind of nudge them closer and closer towards your sale. So if that's one of your KPIs, I think that's good. I'm not familiar with any anything coming up with not average initial copy or initial ideation at this point. But for average stuff, yeah, you can create a month's worth of content in 1 hour or less if you want a bunch of average AI stuff.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, thanks everyone for attending. I'm just going to stop the chat and the video here. We'll give a chance for Jennifer to get ready